There were some who disagreed with my position in the video Nate Parker and the Birth of a Failure. There were some who took offense to positions I took in the video Nate Parker and the Birth of a Failure. While I do not mind you disagreeing with me, I'm going to have to stand up for the positions I took in that video. Now, my argument on why Nate Parker was pretty much grossly unqualified to make this film pretty much, to me, make logical sense. When I look at the background of the Nate Parker's personal life, and I look at the viewpoint and position of the man he was making a biographical film about, both of those positions, again, contradict each other and are diametrically opposed to each other. When I did a simple Google search on the name Nat Turner and on Nat Turner's background, that pretty much right there reinforced my position to why Nate Parker was the wrong person to have out here as the face for this whole The Birth of a Nation movie. Now, your Nate Parker from his college days was out here pursuing relationships with white women, and he is currently married to a white woman. However, when we look at the background of your Nat Turner, the man who led the slave rebellion in the 1830s, we soon find out that Nat Turner went out here and the only person who he confessed to murdering was a white woman. So we look at Nat Turner's background and we look at Nate Parker's background, and it's clear to me that there is a conflict of interest between the two, that they pretty much contradict each other. Here you have this man who's married to a white woman, pursued relationships with white women, making a film about a black man who's going out here leading a slave rebellion, and the only person he kills is a white woman during that slave rebellion. So, again, this is not the man who you want to have up front for all your pictures and trying to sell this movie to an audience. This is not the guy you want to have as the front man for your film. He is just not qualified to go out here and be the face of that film. And this is something that many of these Negroes don't understand when it comes down to selling anything such as a book, a movie, a television show. That person who is the producer, the director, they are the face of that project. And in order for them to be the face of that project, they have to be able to stand up and defend their work. They have to be able to stand up and push their work. And they have to be able to stand up and sell their work to the public. When I look at Nate Parker's background, he was the wrong man to have out here trying to sell this allegedly pro-black movie, which is about blacks standing up for themselves and blacks going out to fight against this so-called white establishment. And you have this guy who's out here with a white woman, and he can't be the face of your product because his position contradicts and is diametrically opposed to what you were trying to sell to the public. You can't have this guy out here. I mean, how can he sit here and say he's a pro-black and pushing a movie that it was about black empowerment, and he's sitting here and sleeping with the enemy? This is what the Negro just doesn't understand. You can't sit here and sleep with the enemy and then say you're going to go out here and make a movie which was about black empowerment. And what's really, backwards about it that many of these Afro-American Negroes don't get is that while this man is with this white woman, you have many of these Negroes sitting up here saying, well, he's with a white woman, that don't mean nothing. Well, that does mean something because the white female is the teacher of culture. So where does the alleged white man, who many of you Negroes say is the ultimate racist, get many of his ideas from? Because this white woman is his teacher of culture. Who taught him about racism and white supremacy? That's the question that many of these Negroes, and that's what goes over their head regarding this whole Nate Parker situation. The other thing that a lot of these Negroes don't get about this is that they'll get mad at you, a person like me, for calling out Nate Parker, but what they'll do is they'll praise me for going out and calling out someone like a Chandra Rhimes or a Lee Daniels for the exact same thing. Now, when I look at your Nate Parker, again, I have to be consistent. If I call Nate Parker out for his relationship with a white woman, I have to do that because in the same position of calling out Chandra Rhimes, who was married to a white man, for her program Scandal and her program How to Get Away with Murder. If she's producing degrading images of black people and exploiting black people, I have to call him out for exploiting black people too, because what he's doing in The Birth of a Nation is presenting a poorly researched film, a poorly written film, and yes, it's visually stunning, and it plays to your emotions in the same way that Lee Daniels did with Monsters Ball, Precious, and that Empire show. But he's using the exact same tactics to try to get to the top that Lee Daniels is using and Shonda Rhimes is using, playing to the emotions of the Negro, but not giving him anything of substance. Again, not having anything of quality presented on his screen. Because when I look at his story again on this Nat Turner pretty much exaggerates this guy, pretty much puts a whole lot of historical inaccuracies in his story, and he's selling this to black people as black empowerment. But again, this is nothing more than black exploitation. But you can't tell the Negro this, because the Negro, again, approaches everything from emotion and not logic. When I look at this Nate Parker guy, he is cut from the exact same cloth as Shonda Rhimes, Lee Daniels, and Tyler Perry. Again, playing to the Negro's emotions in the hopes of winning them over and selling them something at their expense. Unfortunately, this time it didn't go over, because what happened was people started looking into his background, and again, because he did not have the background and did not do the research, he could not stand on his own platform. His platform was rickety from day one, because when he stood there on that platform saying, I'm going to make this movie about Nat Turner, a slave rebellion, black empowerment, and then try to sell it to pro-blacks, hoteps, and others who say that they want to see this type of film, and then he's sitting here with a white woman, that made his platform impossible to stand on. In order to sell a product, the pitch man, the front man, has to be qualified to do that. They have to be able to defend their positions. They have to be able to cite sources that back up their positions. They have to be able to reinforce their arguments when they present their work to others. I know this for a fact, because oftentimes when I present work to people, I have to do that. Because just about a year ago, I wrote a book about an African American goth called Spinsterella, and this year I'm doing the prequel to it called Spellbound. And in order for me to write that book about the goth subculture, I had to spend about 2 or 3 years listening to goth music, and I spent over 2 or 3,000 hours over 2 or 3 years listening to numerous goth YouTube videos, listening to the people, talking to the people, understanding what this subculture is about, understanding the history of it, understanding what the foundations of it is. So if I want to sell a piece of literature to a group such as the Goths and the Goth subculture and tell African Americans about it, I have to be able to defend my positions, defend my what I've written about, cite sources, go back to people, and be able to defend that platform. And I also have to be, that also qualifies me to go out here and sell my work and be the face of my work, because I'm coming out here and I can't say that I'm writing a book about African American Goths without having, again, the background in it from the research, and also having the face to sell it, because when you make a product, you are the face of that product, and you have to be able to defend your position, you have to be able to sell your product, and you have to be able to be persuasive about selling your product. So when people come to you like they did to Nate Parker with those allegations from 1999, you have to be able to come out and defend yourself and say, look, that case was adjudicated, that case was dealt with in court, that has no bearing on this. But what really had a bearing, I believe, on what made Birth of a Nation sell poorly was with the fact that, again, he could not defend his position. Here he was making a film about Nat Turner and a slave rebellion, but he could not defend his position because he's married to this white woman. Here you have this guy who's saying he wants to go out and kill Whitey, but you have the man who makes the film is married to a white woman. Again, that is a contradiction, that is a conflict of interest, and that pretty much made a lot of sour taste in people's mouths. You can't sell your work that way. When you go out here to sell work, you have to be able to, again, stand up for that work, back that position up, and be passionate about what you're selling. I mean, with this Nate Parker, he wasn't able to do that. He wasn't able to do that out of the gate. And then on top of it, when they put his Project Scrutiny, what happened with him was he, again, was not able to defend his work. He put historical inaccuracies in his film. He put scenes in there where Nat Turner kills the slave master, and then he goes out, and his motivation for the rebellion was not historically accurate. They said that his motivation was something that happened to when these white men violated his wife. A total lie, because your Nat Turner pretty much led that rebellion because he said he was being led by God. This was his position and a historical fact. And here this guy is in his adaptation of that, taking creative liberties with the film, turning this Nat Turner in the film into some sort of Superman, when that wasn't the case at all. Your Nat Turner in real life was a mentally ill man who had been who had become a religious zealot and thought he was being led by God to go out here and lead this insurrection. Unfortunately, what had happened was, after this insurrection had came and went, after 2 days, it was quickly squashed, and Nat Turner wound up, after he killed this one woman, Mrs. Whitehead, he went out here in the, he was gone, hiding in the woods for 2 months, and then they finally caught him, and then he was murdered. I'm not murdered, executed for his part in that insurrection. And then, after this, we have everybody talking about this is like Braveheart. Yes, the way he was killed was like Braveheart, but that way he led that insurrection did more damage to Negro relations in America at the time than anything else. Because in the aftermath of this Nat Turner slave rebellion, many states started passing laws to pretty much restrict the behaviors of African Americans at that time. This is why we had things like the Fugitive Slave Law. This is why we had things like laws passed so that blacks could not learn how to read and write. This is why we had laws pretty much preventing, in some states, blacks from owning guns, because many feared another slave insurrection led by someone like Nat Turner. But this is something that your Nate Parker pretty much, again, overlooks, just like your pro-blacks and many others who are advocates for this film. They overlook that the facts and details that this guy pretty much left out in his revisionist film that revises history and pretty much exaggerates this Nat Turner story and makes it more than what it is. And this is why the film didn't really resonate with audiences, because they looked at the film and saw it was historically inaccurate and just exaggerated. And also, I think a lot of Americans are just tired of slave movies. They're just tired of seeing them, because everything with these Negroes in film, always showing them as a victim, is getting tiring to watch. And a lot of people, yes, they say that it was empowering for some, but for a lot of others, it was the same old thing. And they got tired of seeing it. And that's why one of the reasons why the movie flopped. But when I look at the guy's platform and his positions, again, his platform does not fit this film. He was a bad fit for this film. And when you're trying to sell a film to distributors and even the general audience, you need to have that face be the strongest face out there, because he's the one who's going to be pitching to the public. He's the one that's going to be selling to the public. And you have to be able to, again, when you're out here as the face of a product, be able to defend those positions. And then you have to be able to sell those customers on why they should go out and buy your product. And Nate Parker was not able to go out here and do that. He was hampered not only by those 1999 allegations, but he was also hampered by that white woman he had on his arm, and then sitting here telling the audience they need to go see a film about this pro-black revolutionary Nat Turner and the man who went out here and killed one white woman while he's got a white woman on his arm. And that, again, is a conflict of interest, a total contradiction of everything he was selling to the public, and pretty much a piece of hypocrisy that pretty much wound up torpedoing his film before it even got up off the ground. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.